is News Conference Extra with Conan Nolan.
Good morning and welcome to News Conference Extra, a special segment of Today in LA Weekend. I'm Conan Nolan. With us, Jessica Levinson of Loyola Law School and Dan Schnur of the University of Southern California and UC Berkeley, talking about politics, but let's talk about impeachment. We are going to be interviewing Adam Schiff at 9 o'clock. There's a suggestion he's made that there could be subpoenas of witnesses that they didn't get in the trial. Some would say, move on. What do you say?
I think a lot of people are going to say move on. So in terms of what actually gets people to the polls in 2020, I think it's the questions that affect their daily lives. So it's questions about education, about health care, about the environment, about, in some cases, criminal justice, immigration. But I think Congress is going to continue working on these. There are still lots of open questions. They still stand on very firm legal grounds to the extent that they want to issue these subpoenas. They now actually have the time. They don't have the impeachment clock running, so they have the time to have these subpoena battles in court. And frankly, I think it is time to let the third branch, the judicial branch, weigh in and say, it's not just important now, but it's important for every other president and every other Congress to know subpoenas aren't a wish, a hope, and a prayer. They're actually binding legal requests. And so I think that there is still utility, maybe not short-term political utility, but long-term presidential utility in going forward.
Yeah, well, short-term is important because we're talking about an election.
Well, in addition to the legal and constitutional principles, the real challenge for the Democratic Party right now in Congress is a communications challenge. They say, and they're technically correct, they say we can both investigate and legislate at the same time. And of course they can. But as you know better than most, Conan, there's a very limited news window for most voters. And ultimately, the Democrats have to decide, is our primary message going to be one of legislation and kitchen table policy issues? Or is our primary message going to be one of constitutional misconduct on the part of the president? You can say we'll do both, but ultimately the voters are going to hear and see a lot more of one than the other. That's their challenge in the weeks and months ahead.
We heard on Thursday the president's victory lap over acquittal. He used an expletive. He talked about Adam Schiff being evil. But then you had on the State of the Union the image of Nancy Pelosi ripping up the speech. And some have argued, listen, you play into Donald Trump's hands when you do that.
Well, and this was the message, ironically, that Pelosi herself was warning Democratic candidates of in the midterm elections in 2018. She said, don't sink to his level, concentrate on the issues, we'll do much better. I think what Pelosi understood is that the story on Tuesday night was the story of impeachment. She might as well make herself part of that story. And if she pivots her caucus now back to policy, she'll probably be all right. But it was a notable, we'll say diplomatically, change of historical and traditional behavior from both the president and the speaker.
But I think of Republican suburban women who won the House for the Democrats in 2018, and they look at that and they think, a pox on both houses. You're all acting childish.
I think that's true. I mean, I think that it was like Adam Schiff when he started the impeachment inquiry and he basically did a spoof on what the transcript said. It's kind of, in a way, it's an unforced error. You're giving people something to talk about. On the other hand, we're spending a lot more time talking about Nancy Pelosi tearing up that speech than the President of the United States either not shaking her hand or the substance of what he actually said and did. You know, is this now going to be part of Republican campaigns? Absolutely. We already saw it on the internet about 50 seconds after she did it. There were 50,000 memes of her, tearing up that page. But I think that they were both talking to their base. I think there are a lot of people in the base who are excited.
But you don't have to worry about the base. That's the point, though. You're trying to expand the base, are you not?
Well, in traditional politics, the kind of politics I practiced back in my past and the kind you covered in your earlier career, Conan, was about reaching out to the middle. That's not the way politics works in 2020 anymore. Presidential politics and politics on down is about base motivation. Donald Trump is the motivator in chief for both his friends and his foes. Pelosi, it's worth remembering, tried to warn her caucus against impeachment. She finally succumbed because the base was so powerful and so insistent.
True. Since you brought that up, let's get into it just for a minute. And by the way, we were going to hold you over for 9 o'clock. But, so yes, I got that. Drive out your base. But that worked for Donald Trump because of the Electoral College and the overwhelming influence of rural Republican states in the center of the country. And it doesn't work for Democrats, because you could nominate somebody, Jessica, who wins California by another 100,000 votes. It doesn't matter.
Right. So the Democrats have a lot of challenges when it comes to the Electoral College. Structurally, it is more helpful for Republicans. Democrats have a problem when it comes to motivating their base, because their base is so much more diverse. There's not just one monolithic message. It is interesting that after the House voted to impeach, it was basically Nancy Pelosi who said, don't applaud, don't give them anything to use as fodder. This is a solemn moment. We didn't want to do that. And I don't think that she simply lost control of herself in the sense that she just couldn't stop. But I think that she did feel at that moment she had to, in 7 seconds, make a more important statement than you could with 7,000
Well, the signing ceremony, I think, that wasn't wise. When you signed the articles of impeachment, it's sort of a celebratory, and that didn't look good.
But what she is trying to do, and your point about the challenge with Democrats balancing between a base and centrist voters, is the right one. But I think what Pelosi understands is that in order to have the political leeway to reach out to the center, she has to be able to feed her base on occasion. And the signing ceremony and the pens, the ripping of the script, that's your way of keeping her most loyal Democrats revved up to give her and the eventual nominee, hopefully for them, the leeway to reach out to the center.
We're going to get your take on what's going to happen in New Hampshire and the race for president on the Democratic side when we have you back at 9 o'clock. That's Jessica Levinson of Loyola and Dan Schnur of USC. We will, at 9 o'clock, be talking with Congressman Adam Schiff, the House impeachment manager, and we're going to talk to him about whether or not he's going to continue with, again, those affidavits or subpoenas for testimony. Plus, Dean Logan, the Registrar of Voters for Los Angeles County, on the new voting system that is being rolled out for March the 3rd. That's News Conference at 9 o'clock following Meet the Press. We'll see you then.